This is every Pacific team's most realistic path at the title, and we're kicking things off with the Los Angeles Lakers, who I'm giving a B-. Now, with Luka Doncic landing in LA and reportedly getting into the best shape of his career this offseason, the setup is clearly there for a revenge tour. The buzz is loud, expectations are high, and honestly, it feels like Luka is ready to remind the whole league exactly who he is. But let's not forget something. Building around Luka isn't some abstract puzzle. There's already been a proven formula. We saw it back in 2024 when he dragged the Mavericks all the way to the finals. Luka doesn't just isolate and dominate. He thrives in high pick and rolls, bending defenses with his playmaking ability, throwing lobs to bigs, and bullying switches in the mid-range. But for all that to work, the team around him has to check certain boxes. Long, mobile defenders who can cover for him on defense, and big men who can clean up around the rim. That Mavericks team had 4 guys who fit that system to a T. PJ Washington, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, and Derek Jones Jr. All of them were versatile, high-motor rim-rolling players who let Luka be Luka, while covering for what he isn't as good at. The Lakers, they don't quite have that. DeAndre Ayton might look like he fits the mold on paper, but the reality is a different story. He can be used as a vertical lob threat, but the truth is, he is way more of a finesse big, way more comfortable with hook shots and mid-range jumpers rather than rolling hard to the rim. His motor has always been a massive question mark, and sure, LeBron James can still give you bursts of brilliance, even coming into year 23, but he just isn't the same downhill force or defender he once was. LeBron still averaged 24.4 points, 7.8 rebounds, and 8.2 assists last year on 57% true shooting, which are just absurd numbers for someone in their 22nd season, but eventually, we'll assume Father Time is going to catch up. We just don't know when, because so far, even when it should've, it hasn't. Outside of Luka and LeBron though, the supporting cast feels thin. Marcus Smart brings the toughness and versatility, but he definitely isn't a pick and roll partner for Luka or a lob threat. Jackson Hayes has had moments as that kind of player, but he just could not stay on the floor in the playoffs. Whether that was a bad coaching decision or he genuinely wasn't good enough to be on the floor is up for debate. But what isn't is that Hayes hasn't proven himself to be a reliable starting center on a title team. So at the end of the day, the Lakers feel like they're in this strange in-between state. They've got 2 top 10 players, no question, and the talent on paper is good enough to keep them in the hunt. But the fit, the depth, the long-term direction, it's all a little bit murky. It feels like the franchise is just waiting for LeBron to retire before truly committing to the new identity around Luka. And while I expect them to win plenty of games, I just don't think they'll be able to beat the West's best consistently enough when May and June roll around. Now, we're on to the Los Angeles Clippers, and for me, I'm giving them a B chance at the title. This was one of the busiest teams this offseason. 16 total moves, but it's their headline names that make you sit up. James Harden re-signed, Brook Lopez was brought in, John Collins came over via trade, and maybe the biggest surprise of all, signing Bradley Beal after his Phoenix buyout. Getting a player who was just on a $50 million per year deal just for $11 million across 2 years, that's unbelievable value, regardless on how his son's stint went. And look, Beal didn't exactly make lasting memories as a Sun, averaging 17 points on 56% true shooting. But that situation was never really built for him to be able to succeed. He was the third option, standing in the corners while Durant and Booker ran the show. I didn't love the Suns trading for him even when it happened, and it played out somehow even worse than I predicted. Most of the criticism he got though wasn't about his game. It was about that massive contract and the awkward fit. But now with the Clippers, the fit actually makes more sense. After the Clippers traded away Norman Powell for Collins, they needed somebody to replace that perimeter scoring, and Beal is actually an upgrade in that position. He's going to get more touches, more rhythm, and he doesn't have to carry the full load either. Meanwhile, Collins gives them a legitimate athletic 4 who they can just plug and play next to their bigs. Speaking of the big man, Ivica Zubac just had the best season of his career, and somehow it flew completely under the radar. He finished 6th in Defensive Player of the Year voting, made the All-Defensive second team, and was averaging 16.8 points, 12.6 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks per game on 63% shooting. The pick-and-roll connection with Harden in particular was a real weapon, and James, while no longer the Houston version, is still one of the smartest playmakers in the NBA. His ability to pick apart defenses, control the tempo of the game, and make the right read nearly every time is exactly what this team needs. The playoff history is what it is. But during the regular season, you trust James Harden to steer the ship. And then there's Kawhi Leonard. His availability is always the biggest question, but when he's on the court, he still looks like that guy. In the first round series against the Nuggets, he averaged 25 points per game on 60% true shooting, hit 40% of his threes, and added over a steal a game. He was locked in. And now, with Bradley Beal in the mix, the Clippers should be even better equipped to hold things down during Kawhi's inevitable absences, without completely falling off offensively. Something Norman Powell did a decent job at last season, but I would expect Bradley Beal to be able to do that a lot more comfortably. The Brook Lopez signing might have been the most underrated move though, in that playoff series against the Nuggets. One of the Clippers' biggest weaknesses was the drop-off when Zubac left the floor. Now, they've got 48 minutes of a rock-solid center between either Zubac or Brook Lopez. That is going to be a game-changer, and that move just felt like it was targeted at a matchup with Denver next season. So yeah, at least for now, the Clippers appear to be the kings of LA. I know that's not something Laker fans really want to hear, and maybe it doesn't last for that long once Luka gets the right pieces around him, but going into next season, I'm telling you right now, LA runs through the Clippers. Up next, let's talk about the Sacramento Kings. And for me, I'm giving them a D chance at the title. And honestly, what even is this roster anymore? Just 2 seasons ago, they were one of the most exciting up-and-coming young teams in that Western Conference, climbing all the way up to the 3 seed, giving Golden State a run for their lives with that 7-game series, and finally giving their fans something real to believe in. It felt like we were witnessing the beginning of something, but fast forward to now, and somehow, and for some reason, they've rebuilt the 2022 Chicago Bulls. On purpose. I don't even know how else to say it. This team has lost all of its direction, and the future of the franchise feels more uncertain than it has been in years. Kings fans, I'm so sorry, but this team looks destined for long-term mediocrity. When you look at their core for next season, the big names are Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Domantas Sabonis. All 3 are solid players in their own right, but none of them are elite. None of them strike fear into playoff caliber teams. Over at The Athletic, Law Murray had them ranked 21st overall in the league coming into next season, and I don't think there's a single argument to be made that this isn't where they belong. They were active this offseason, sure. Keon Ellis and Isaac Jones had their options picked up, Trey Lyles and Doug McDermott returned, and they added guys like Dennis Schroeder, Dario Saric, and Drew Eubanks. But what really changed? This wasn't the kind of free agency that defines a roster. It was simply just noise. They shipped out Jonas Valanciunas and Jake LaRavia, brought in some role players, but all of that just feels like lateral movement at the best. And the construction of the roster doesn't make any sense. It's an incredibly top-heavy team whose top guys aren't even amongst the best in their position. Then there's a weird logjam at the guard spot between Ellis, Schroeder, Markelle Fultz, and Carter, none of whom exactly move the needle anyway, as it's not even the kind of depth that you get excited about. It's just kind of there. So heading into next season, I expect the Sacramento Kings to be one of the more forgettable teams in the entire league. Now, let's take a look at the Golden State Warriors. And for me, I'm giving them a B grade at the title. And honestly, I feel like a lot of people are actually sleeping on this team. Yes, they still haven't made a single move this offseason, mainly because of the ongoing Jonathan Kuminga situation. He's a restricted free agent. The team clearly wants him back, but only on their terms, as he's in the same situation as Josh Giddey, Quentin Grimes, and Cam Thomas are all in right now. They're high-end role players whose value in this current CBA has been completely diminished, and because they all think they should be paid more, which they're right to think that, but the franchises simply can't give them that money because they don't want to go into the aprons, we're having these standoffs. It has been weeks, and none of these situations have been solved. Golden State hasn't really had the flexibility to go out and chase the big names in free agency. That's led to them missing out on some solid additions. But in my eyes, that isn't going to matter nearly as much as people think, because the real difference maker here, it's Jimmy Butler. His arrival last season completely flipped the Warriors' identity. Before he showed up, Golden State was scraping by with a 113.9 offensive rating, a free throw rate in the bottom 15%, and a barely positive 0.7 net rating. But with Jimmy Butler on the floor, everything changed. Their net rating skyrocketed to plus 9.6, and they were getting to the line like a team in the 99th percentile in free throw rate. And the offense clicked at 117.8 points per 100 possessions. His presence was instant and undeniable. And when Jimmy and Steph Curry shared the floor, that is where things got really scary. That duo posted an offensive rating of 120.9, a plus 7 net rating, and they were even able to hold their own defensively. The combination just works. Steph gives Jimmy something he's been missing since the Kevin Durant era, a secondary creator who can take pressure off of him, help to guard on the other end, and allow Steph to operate more off ball where he's the most dangerous. It's such a clean, complementary pairing that honestly might be the best duo in the league right now. If you want an even simpler way to look at it, just look at the record. Golden State are 23-7 all-time with Jimmy Butler. That's no coincidence. He patched up all of the holes this team had before his arrival: perimeter defense, free-throw creation, half-court scoring, and he did it all without stepping on Steph's toes. It's been a seamless transition, and that's why I don't think Golden State need to go all out chasing extra pieces. They might have the best duo in the league, and now they just need some role players to defend, hit open threes, and play their part. They've still got Draymond Green doing all of the dirty work, along with Moses Moody and Brandon Pajemski, who quietly gave them some really solid minutes last season. Even if they run it back with a very similar squad, I would be fully expecting them to be right in the mix again. A full off season for Jimmy and Steph to build on what they've already started is going to be huge. 50 wins for me feels totally within reach. And once you're there, once you're in that top 6 seed, or even if you have to go through the play-in tournament like they did last season, do you really want to go up against Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler in a 7-game series? Because I sure don't. That's why I've got the Golden State Warriors holding a strong B grade and a legitimate shot to make some real noise this season. Now, let's talk about the Phoenix Suns. And yeah, I'm giving them a D-. And honestly, similar to the Kings, I don't know what is going on with their roster either. At least when you're looking at the Kings, you can squint and kind of see a direction, even if it isn't a good one. But with the Suns, it feels like just chaos with no plan. It's hard to believe this was a team in the NBA Finals just 4 years ago, and they had the best record in the league just 3 seasons ago. But that window has came and completely gone. Kevin Durant, gone. Chris Paul, gone. DeAndre Ayton, gone. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Jay Crowder, all gone. The entire 2021 core has been ripped apart. And now, the only guy left standing is Devin Booker. And now even he is in a situation that makes no sense, having to share the backcourt with Jalen Green. The Bradley Beal saga perfectly sums up the dysfunction. You traded for a guy with a no-trade clause on a $50 million deal, and then proceeded to fully tank his his value by bringing him off the bench. Now he's off the roster entirely, and yet you're still having to pay him. That is horrible business. Let's look at the offseason moves as a whole. They brought in Jalen Green, Mark Williams, Dylan Brooks, Nigel Hayes-Davis, and Kaman Maliwatch. And going out of the door, Tyus Jones, Mason Plumlee, Micic, Cody Martin, Beal, and Kevin Durant. So yeah, they were active, but did they actually get any better? Definitely not. They shipped out two of the most talented scorers in the NBA and replaced them with guys who simply do not elevate their ceiling in any kind of meaningful way. Jalen Green still has potential, sure, but his career so far has been more empty stats than actually winning impact. Dylan Brooks brings the defense and the energy, but he's certainly not saving this team. Mark Williams has been solid, but we're a long way from even DeAndre Ayton's peak potential, which is saying something. And here's the bigger problem. They're stuck. This team doesn't have cap flexibility. They're not going to be bad enough to get really good picks, and they just hit the self-destruct button without any real plan on how they're going to build back up. There are teams in the league with less talent, but none, and I mean none, are in a worse situation than the Phoenix Suns. But looking across to the Northwest Division, there are some real juggernauts waiting to attack the 2026 season head on. And if you want to see where they all rank, you can watch that full breakdown right now.